President Trump says Israel will not attack Lebanon's capital, Beirut, and Hezbollah has agreed to halt its rocket and drone fire against Israel. The president made the comments after a phone call with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He said he'd also spoken to representatives of Hezbollah. Iranian officials have increasingly been making it clear that there could be no agreement if Israel continued its offensive against Hezbollah in Lebanon. Thousands of Lebanese have been fleeing the southern suburbs of Beirut after Mr. Netanyahu ordered attacks, despite the ceasefire, on the area where Hezbollah has long had its stronghold, calling them terrorist targets in Dahieh. John Sudworth reports now from Beirut.
Israel's warning came just before 10 in the morning, and within minutes, families from this neighbourhood, deeply loyal to Hezbollah, were piling their children and belongings into cars and heading for safety.
Are you guys leaving?
This woman tells me she is, but she's okay with it. Even if we're struck, we will support Hezbollah. She says it will be victorious.
Excuse me, why are you leaving?
We'll be back, this man says, and he too speaks of victory. The Dahieh district, where the militant group has deep roots, has been left relatively untouched for the past few weeks. But the Israeli Prime Minister said that was about to change. Together with the Minister of Defence, he said, I have instructed our military to attack terror targets in Beirut. Israel says it's fighting to stop this. The barrages of rockets and drones fired from Lebanon by Hezbollah, and that once again today had to be intercepted by its missile defences. It's a constant threat for the fatigued communities below.
A normal person cannot stand the crazy situation we have here, so only with drugs a person can continue on functioning here.
It bothers us, this man says. It's hard to get up every day to the sirens and the children running to the shelters. This has been Israel's response. And in recent weeks, even as it's largely held off striking Beirut, it's been intensifying its military action in the south. With strikes like this one close to the hospital in the city of Tyre. It's been expanding its occupation too, with its troops pushing further north to take the strategically important Beaufort Castle this weekend. For weeks, the US was thought to be pressuring Israel to limit its action here in Beirut because of Iran's insistence that any wider peace deal must include Lebanon too. But with the negotiations now fraying, it seems the restraint has been lifted, and this district of Dahieh and a wider city waits nervously to see what happens next. Meanwhile, Iran has said that if Israel's planes do strike this city, it will in turn target northern Israel. Once again, all talk of peace seems very premature. John Sudworth, BBC News, Beirut.
President Trump says US talks with Iran are continuing at a rapid pace, despite Iranian media reports that Tehran was pausing contacts with Washington. It comes as both countries have carried out attacks, with each blaming the other as the tension escalates. Where does it all leave the ceasefire? James Landau reports.
In this war, a ceasefire is fast becoming an exchange of fire. Iran said these missiles were launched at a US base that it said had been used to attack Iranian territory. The sirens over Kuwait City suggested their destination. US commanders said they intercepted 2 Iranian ballistic missiles targeted at American forces in the country. This followed US strikes on what it said was Iranian radar and command and control sites in the town of Goruk and the island of Keshem. Iran claimed it was acting in self-defense and said the US was the aggressor.
Violations of the ceasefire are themselves indicative of US misconduct and bad faith, and merely intensify the existing mistrust in any interaction with the American side.
Meanwhile, a cargo ship off the coast of Iraq was hit by what UK maritime authorities said was an unknown projectile, causing a large explosion. So is this increased military activity in the Gulf and Lebanon making a deal to open the Strait of Hormuz less likely? Well, Iran said today the US and Israel would be responsible for the consequences of violating the ceasefire in Lebanon. And state media suggested Tehran had suspended indirect negotiations with the US. But on social media this evening, Donald Trump declared talks are continuing at a rapid pace with the Islamic Republic of Iran. So the tempo of tit-for-tat exchanges in the Gulf is rising. Last week, the US shot down Iranian drones over the strait and hit military targets twice in Bandar Abbas. Iran said it attacked a US base, most likely up in Kuwait. Both sides claim their actions are defensive, but the risk is of escalation back to all-out war, for which there are costs. BBC Verify has established that across the region, Iran has damaged 20 US military sites since the war began, suggesting its attacks were more extensive than publicly acknowledged. But both sides still seem keen to find a way out. Here in Tehran, the regime's under economic pressure, and in Washington, the administration's under political pressure. But a new ceasefire deal would need trust and calm, and for now, both seem thin on the ground. James Landell, BBC News.
Let's talk to our North America editor, Sarah Smith, who's at the White House. We've heard more from the president this afternoon. Do we know where we are with these talks now?
Look, you could suffer whiplash trying to keep up with the contradictory statements that we're getting from Donald Trump about what's happening with these talks in Iran. As you just heard there, his latest social media post says that they're proceeding at a rapid pace. But that came just a couple of hours after he had been asked about the reports that Iran had suspended the talks. And his response to that was to say that a long period of silence could be a very good idea. And he also said he wasn't planning to resume the bombing campaign, and that he was the one who had time on his side, that he could afford to wait for a deal more than Iran could. And that is one thing he has been consistently trying to say, that he doesn't feel under time pressure, and that, in fact, he will not be rushed into anything because he says he can wait longer than Iran. But that's very difficult to believe when you see the sustained political pressure he is under here in America. He's got some very prominent supporters who are angry that he began this conflict in the first place, and of course it's pushing prices up. And when petrol goes over $4 a gallon here in the United States, as it is right now, voters tend to punish whomever they hold responsible, and right now that would be Donald Trump in an election year. So we know what his priorities have to be: to get the Strait of Hormuz reopened to international shipping, and that will help ease the global financial problems that have been caused. And only after that will they get down to the serious business of talking about what to do about Iran's nuclear program. But for all the times that Donald Trump has told us he are absolutely on the verge of agreeing a deal, none has yet emerged.